Okay. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I'd like to introduce our council member elect, Greg David, who is in the audience with us, sitting next to Chief Atterbury. And welcome to the workshop. Uh, as a matter of protocol, I've talked over with Jackie a little bit about his interaction with the council tonight, and we will allow him to come to the podium and speak as a citizen. But the give and take dialogue, because of the governing body rules, we won't be able to allow him to do that. But we'll allow him to talk with on each subject as he feels he needs to. Okay. So the first issue before us tonight is the capital projects and Woodlawn annexation portion from Sedgwick County, and I'll let Mr. Lasher speak to that.
Thank you, Mayor. It's always good to have a map so that we can look at things, because this is really kind of confusing and kind of interesting. So what we're talking about is Woodlawn right-of-way, and basically from the intersection of 37th and Woodlawn to the railroad tracks. That's the area we're talking about. So on our map right now, you can see the colors, which is Wichita and this is Bel Aire. So they're different colors. So you can see the intersection is actually owned and maintained by Wichita. And then going to the east, 37th is Wichita, and then going to the west, going to the east is Bel Aire's. So that's kind of the way this intersection is divided right now. Up until a couple years ago, the intersection itself was divided. Bel Aire or Wichita had the south half, Bel Aire had a quarter, and Sedgwick County had a quarter. And we did some negotiating and determined that it was best for Wichita to take the whole thing, and that was taken care of a couple years ago. So, so the issue that we're talking about tonight is really from the intersection north. So the way it is now is this from the center line over to the property line is Bel Aire. That portion of the road is owned by Bel Aire. From the intersection and to the center of the road over to the east is actually owned by Sedgwick County. And of course, this is Wichita and this is Bel Aire. So another view, again, is this part is Bel Aire and this is Sedgwick County. So, what we've talked about is we know that Woodlawn expansion is set. There's been a lot of discussions about this right-of-way, and just a brief history of how that took place. Up until about 15 years ago, cities could annex up to a road right-of-way and not take the road. And so a lot of cities did that because roads are expensive. We know that, and there's no money. You don't make a profit on roads. And so the money that you make is off of the property taxes on the houses. So so cities would do that. They would annex up to the road, not take the road, and the county would be stuck with the road. So about 15 years ago, the legislature took up this issue and required cities to annex either the entire road or at least half the road, and then another city annexed the other half. So when Bel Aire annexed our portion, we annexed to the center of the road, which was what was required. Wichita is actually over here. They had annexed this before that was required. So that's why this was kept in Sedgwick County. So we had some preliminary discussions with Wichita and Sedgwick County about in 2017 when we were talking about that intersection and who was going to take the pieces of the intersection. And the discussion was kind of around that, okay, we knew this was an issue. Wichita said, listen, we'll take the whole intersection if Bel Aire, if you'll take this other half from the county. Of course, the county wants out of it because it's difficult for them. And as far as the legal aspects and enforcement stuff, Chief's here that can answer questions that he may have issues with owning half the road. So as part of the initial discussions with Sedgwick County is that we know that Woodlawn expansion is going to cost several $1 million. We've seen that. So we asked MKEC to come up with what would the county's portion be if they were going to share in this, because it's their road, they should. What would their portion be? And they come up with about $745,000. So Jackie and I worked on an agreement between the city of Bel Aire and Sedgwick County that they would reimburse the city for this portion, and then the city would take over maintenance and ownership of this portion. So I've given that to Sedgwick County. Obviously, they're looking at it. They're crunching their numbers to see how that makes sense and how it got to that price, and et cetera, et cetera. But the negotiation staff-wise have started, and so they're going to come back with some type of proposal, I'm sure, on the dollar amount. But anyway, I just wanted to make sure the mayor and I were talking about this as we're negotiating. Is everybody comfortable with this? Do you have some concerns? What do you think that the agreement should look like as we're moving forward before we get to actually you guys present it to you guys?
So in my discussion with Ty about this, I'm not excited about Bel Aire annexing that road. And the reason is because we do not get any property taxes from those properties on the east side of that road. Those property taxes go to Wichita. And unfortunately for Bel Aire, we get the brunt of that on several places. We have it on 45th out east. We have it on Oliver, the entire length of Oliver. We have it along 53rd, where we own the road, but we don't get the tax benefit of the property owners from the other side of that road. And that's, I think we kind of take it on the shorts on that. That's my real reason for not wanting to annex it. But I would be willing to go talk with Wichita, with Mayor Whipple, about them annexing that, because it makes sense that the county should get out of it. I get that, but I would think it would be wiser for Wichita to annex it. In fact, I saw Mayor Whipple just about an hour ago and told him I needed to call him and get a meeting with him, and he was amenable to that, but he didn't know what the subject was because we just saw him in passing. So anyway, that's my take on it. So.
If they would annex it, then we wouldn't get the $700,000, and yet we would still do all the maintenance on the road.
So I think from the county standpoint, they want out of it. So I think if we would annex it or Wichita would annex it, I think they'd be willing to pay their share just to get out of it. I think if we went to them and said, we want you to pay, but we're not going to annex it, you're going to keep it, I think they would say, no. Yeah. We're not going to pay for it. Yeah, so that makes sense. I think if either us or Wichita would take it, they're going to pay.
So if Wichita takes it, Wichita will get the $700,000. Is that correct?
No, they would give it to us because we're the one paying for the whole road.
Yeah, the $750,000 is to pay for the reconstruction of the road,
which needs to happen.
Yeah.
Anyway, you look at it.
Right.
So I get it. So really, I was just wanted to share what our negotiation were. If anybody had any other concerns, the mayor said that he would be willing to meet with the mayor in Wichita and see if they're interested. Because the same with you all, anybody that annexes it, the governing body is going to have to approve it. So if Wichita said, yeah, we'll do it, then their council would have to approve it. And so that's why the mayor was thinking about meeting with the mayor to see where their governing body would be on that.
Yeah, I was just thinking in terms of our city shape. This is why you want your city to be a rectangle or a square and not a piece from Tetris. Because we have a lot more roads that border, the mileage of road we have bordering Wichita is, probably double what it would be if we were just a rectangle in shape. So I don't know. I guess I'm open to the Wichita option.
I am too, and I don't. We do have those odd situations along 45th Street as well. where we've got just these weird cutout shapes. And if we are going to have a meeting with the city of Wichita to talk about annexing and boundaries, I don't know if it makes sense to consider that as a topic in the discussion, to just bring it up and see how they feel about the jagged borders in those areas as well. And it does change the scope of the discussion, but it may be just worth a footnote in there to get a read on that. I don't know, how they feel about it.
My guess tells me that Mayor Whipple has never thought about that, but I could certainly broach the subject. with her.
It's
Because
weird.
you look at a map, I say it looks like a monkey wrench. Okay, the shape of the city looks like a monkey wrench, but that's just my view of it.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Just FYI, as you're having this discussion, I do think it's important to note that if there's an accident or a crime occurs on one side of the street, right now, we don't have jurisdiction. So if someone gets in an accident, swerves over, where did the impact happen? Where did it stop? We're working through sorting that. So from a just purely legal perspective, it is nice to have both sides, both lanes. Now, there's a consideration that once the accident goes into the easement or off the road, now you don't own the land, so that's still going to be an issue. But the enforcement side of it does value having both sides of the street to a degree.
I guess I got a question. Does this happen anywhere else in the city? Do we have, does Sedgwick County have a strip of road between Wichita and Bel Aire?
So we don't have any other roads that we're splitting a road. Now, as I think Justin was mentioning, on 45th Street from Woodlawn to the railroad tracks, that is Wichita's road. And then from the railroad tracks over to Webb is, did I say Woodlawn?
You said Woodlawn, but you meant Rock Road.
Rock Road,
Yes.
yeah. And then from the railroad tracks to Webb is Bel Aire's road. Now, so that mile of road is split in half, but the road itself is not split in half.
Chief?
Yeah, from 53rd to the railroad tracks just south of 254. The southbound lanes are G-Chop, and the northbound lane
Right.
up to just south of the railroad tracks is
On 53rd, yeah.
and that's another
Another problem.
would be
Yeah.
jurisdictional thing.
Mhm. Yeah. Ms. Wynn, did you want to say something? Oh, I thought you raised your hand.
No, I didn't think you had seen the
Oh,
chief was trying to
okay.
get your
All right.
attention, so I was
all right.
giving him-
Well, I think, either way, getting this in front of the county makes sense because it starts to give them an idea of, what their calculated costs are going to be either way this goes. And then I do understand the concerns from the mayor on, well, if Wichita's on the east side of that road, they're collecting the taxes for it. They probably should have that obligation moving forward. That does logically make sense to me. So.
I guess I'm curious, Jackie, how does having both sides of the road help from a law enforcement standpoint?
Jurisdiction. So if an accident happens over there, it's rare that the entire accident would remain on one side of the road. Typically, there's going to be some spillage on the other side of the road. So right now, chief would have to coordinate with the county and see, okay, where's the momentum for that? Where did the momentum happen? Where did the accident begin? And if it began on one lane, on the northbound lanes, then we're good. If it began on the southbound lanes, we have to stop and allow Sedgwick County to come in and take care of it. And so when you're prosecuting, jurisdiction is one of the first things you have to prove. And so you'd have to prove that split road, that the accident happened on your side of that road, which can be a little tricky. But I do know that Chief has a good relationship with the county right now. And I guess your options would be either having Bel Aire take the whole street or replacing the county with the city of Wichita. And we'd have to have that same relationship with them as well.
So the intersection currently is managed by Wichita,
Exactly.
but I don't know how far past the intersection that jurisdiction goes for their management Because if there's an accident in the intersection of 37th and Woodlawn, Wichita takes care of it regardless of who has the actual ownership of the particular piece of property.
Correct. We de-annexed that for that reason. So, because our
Oh,
intersection.
we
was-
de-annexed it. Oh, okay. That's, I forgot
The
about that.
intersection
We
was
did.
split in the same way, and
Right.
accidents in an intersection are even harder because now you're trying to draw a grid and where did it happen, where's the evidence, and so we gave it all to Wichita.
So where does that stop? Right at the street line, or does it have a distance from the street that it?
I don't.
Okay, so right now, here we go. So if I recall the diagram from 17, we have the right turn lane right there. We have, if somebody's going south on Woodlawn and they're turning to go westbound on 37th, we have that single lane. From the north curb line of the intersection, north to the railroad tracks, is where we have some jurisdiction, but only in the southbound lanes. Somebody could be driving 100 miles an hour northbound, and I can't do anything until they pass the tracks. But everybody thinks they're in Bel Aire, so they're going to call here. Yeah, I mean, the things that happen in the northbound lane impact us, whether it's fixing potholes, because people call here because as soon as they pass 37th, they feel as though they're in Bel Aire. Yeah. They've got that ownership. That this is our street. Little do they know it's only half of ours.
Right.
So we've got anything that happens in the northbound lane and points to the east, we don't have any jurisdiction to enforce.
What's the frequency that we're dealing with issues like this in that particular stretch of county?
Speeding, you mean traffic violations or wrecks?
I'm interested in how often are we having to kind of go through the process of determining jurisdiction
Anytime there's
due
an
to
incident.
accidents in that area.
Yeah, anytime there's an incident because of the rotation of officers, deputies, new officers, old officers.
Yeah, so I guess my questions to the frequency of that is that once a month we have an accident in that stretch? Is it once a day? Is it?
You could
How
go
many
a
per
couple of
year?
months with nothing and then have 5 in a week. So it's just based on the traffic patterns and the activity of people who are frequenting the area.
Do we know how many we've had like this year approximately?
Oh, I have no idea because we don't have those stats. We don't work the wrecks.
I was
wouldn't
thinking we
we
might
wouldn't
be
own the
called there
statistics.
based on kind of what we were talking about, where you guys show up, the county shows up, and then we kind of have to figure out who's got the jurisdiction. I thought we just might know how
Yeah,
many
we
times
don't
we
keep
showed up there.
statistics on that.
Okay.
We've got the actual traffic crash data for the places we go, but since we wouldn't be working that traffic crash, we wouldn't maintain any data over it.
So just to be clear, are you saying you would prefer that we own it all, or you don't have a preference, or what?
Well,
what
my personal preference is that we be able to enforce and work cases on that whole stretch of road. So my personal preference, just as the police chief, would be that we have control over that whole right of way. It's much cleaner that way instead of splitting it with Wichita or Sedgwick County right today. We would have the whole thing. It's just much cleaner from an enforcement standpoint.
Is there such a thing as agreements with other cities to say, okay, you own it, but we'll manage it? Because I thought we did some of those kind of things with some of these
Not with
intersections.
us. I mean, we can't do that because we have jurisdictional lines. If we don't own it, I can't enforce on it. So we can't make an agreement that it supersedes what the law says about jurisdictions.
Okay. I just
Is that correct, Jackie?
That's correct.
Well, because the reason I asked that, because I thought we had agreements for other issues of managing, like the intersection of Rock and 45th. I thought that was managed by Wichita,
Mhm.
even though half that intersection is Bel Aire.
Well, but you're talking about public works and maintenance versus law enforcement.
Okay. Okay. So maybe a compromise, and I'm just throwing this out as an idea, maybe a compromise is we take it, but we get an agreement with Wichita that they would participate in public works and maintenance of that road. Would that be a reasonable compromise to this type of a thing, to take care of your concerns of law enforcement?
That,
And
well, as far as my ability to enforce on something that is not jurisdictionally ours, I just don't have the authority to do that.
right,
now-
what I was suggesting is we annex the road, but we get an agreement with Wichita that they help pay the maintenance. And
I like the sound of it.
I mean, if that's what we have,
Yeah.
if that's the situation we have at 45th and Rock, if that's true, and that's what I'm asking, maybe we could do similar type agreement at 37th Woodlawn.
So yeah, we have agreements with Wichita on public works side to like for snow removal. So the county's not going to come in and do snow removal on that half a mile. So we do that. And then some of our outer, like 53rd out towards 127th and stuff, they'll do that for us, or Webb Road and stuff where they're actually going through.
That's just snow removal, or does that include maintenance like potholes or other type of maintenance? Like if we needed to resurface the road, they would
Yes.
participate in that, those
Right.
kind of things.
So resurfacing that, we wouldn't share in that cost.
We would not, or we would.
No, we wouldn't. That would be up to them to do. And you'll see that. So for example, on Greenwich and Webb, if you remember, I think it was this summer or last summer, the county coming from 254, it was all new blacktop that they did, and they stopped at our city limits. And then like Wichita would be coming up and they stop at our city limits. So we don't have any agreements like that with them. It's just more for your maintenance. I think we may go fix a pothole or something down there rather than trying to get the county involved. I think, Mayor, to your comments, I think that's certainly a discussion. Like if you talked to Mayor Whipple and said, our thought was maybe you would annex to the center, and I'm sure nobody wants roads. So my guess is he's going to say, well, I don't know that we would want that. And then maybe an option would be, well, okay, what if we did it? Understanding you're on the site, could we do some kind of an agreement where you would assist us, monetarily with some type of maintenance program or something? And that might be something they would be more interested in. So I think that's a discussion topic with Wichita.
Okay. Well, I was just trying to get an idea of what the issues are, because I obviously don't know them all.
Yep.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Anybody else have more discussion on this? So I'll plan to meet with Mayor Whipple and see what we can discuss. So if you have a map of Bel Aire and where those jurisdictions are, I'd appreciate it. That would be a great help. Okay. Thank you. Okay, our next item is code review, and the first item on that list is scooters. So I think Miss Kelly is the one that's going to tell us all about scooters.
So scooters are kind of interesting. We've seen commercial scooter companies come into cities and downtown areas, and I think some of our residents were curious about those electric scooters and how they are regulated in Bel Aire. So we'll just start the conversation with what the current law is related to electric scooters, what any opportunities that may be there if the council would want to do more regulation, and then city staff concerns, resources that you might want to think about. And then I will sit down and allow the discussion to happen. So when we talk about the scooters that are primarily in a lot of discussions right now, we're talking about electric assisted scooters, and they're generally defined as self-propelled vehicles that have at least two wheels in contact with the ground, an electric motor handlebars, a brake, and a deck that's designed to be stood upon when riding. So that's the statutory definition of scooters. Some cities have broadened that definition or come up with their own definition to include some of these scooters that you might see with one wheel or with different features. So you can, but that's where we're starting. That's where most cities are starting. For example, I included an example in the staff report. Manhattan, Kansas has done a really good job of scoping out their scooter program, and they came up with a new definition that's there that you can read. So those are the electric scooters. One interesting thing that kind of makes me cringe is that scooters are already permitted on roads in Bel Aire by statutory law. So currently, a person who has a scooter can ride on the road. And scooters generally go 10 to 15, some go 20 miles an hour. So that's a thing. Now, scooters are prohibited on federal and state highways, which we don't have those. We do have arterials. We have Woodlawn and Rock, but those are not federal or state highways. So there's the gap. So the room for council to possibly regulate and discuss would be whether council wants to, because currently the way the state statute is written, they're already permitted, but a city can choose to further regulate or completely eliminate allowing these electric scooters on our roads. So there have been some cities who have passed an ordinance to prohibit scooters from city streets. Now you don't have to prohibit electric scooters from city streets. Now you don't have to deal with them at all. So that's one decision this council could make. Another decision would be to further regulate the scooters that are currently allowed, such as stating, maybe regulating what streets scooters are allowed on. Like we do have the Woodlawn Rock issue, or maybe some more busy streets that you might want to disallow scooters. Council may want to allow some more restrictive standards for scooters, like maybe they be registered with a city and tagged, or limitations on how fast scooters can go. There's so many, Chief and I were looking at the many varieties of what might be defined as a scooter. This council might want to say you can only have a scooter that goes 15 miles or less on city streets. You may want to set zones where in certain city districts you can have scooters. So like Wichita, they have allowed scooters in the downtown districts. Manhattan set a couple of specific zones where they allowed scooters to remain, but they utterly disallowed them in other areas. So now you know where you can ride a scooter, and it's kind of a centralized downtown, is that Aggieville, or I don't know what the downtown Manhattan area is called, but there's an area that it's perfectly appropriate according to their statute. So we can look at areas in Bel Aire that we might want to have a zone where scooters are allowed. You may regulate safety equipment. Some cities require a helmet or other safety equipment for the scooter to have. And again, restricting to appropriate streets. So again, the options would be disallowing them, further regulating them in some way, or a third option is to leave it as it is and just understand that they are out there. We don't see many of them right now. Thank you. We don't see many of them right now, but we also don't necessarily do anything to prevent them. We kind of can't rely on the citizens' good judgment to regulate themselves with scooters versus vehicles. Because one thing this council cannot do, which I think some members of the public were confused about or interested in, is potentially maybe when we do the walking biking path situation, allowing scooters on walking and biking paths. But because state statute in this case preempts us, scooters are a motorized vehicle, they cannot be restricted to sidewalks, because pedestrians and bicycles and other slow-moving pedestrian-like items are on sidewalks. So you can regulate scooters on streets, but you can't have them on sidewalks.
So from what I've seen in the statute, it's a little ambiguous in that it says electric powered.
Mhm.
Teslas are electric powered. They go 120 miles an hour. So you don't see it in this part of the country much, but having lived in LA as a kid, we saw much more powerful things that would classify as a scooter under this definition
Mhm.
that would go 40, 50 miles an hour. They didn't go much faster than that. And you never saw them on freeways, but we saw them on surface streets all the time. And so what I'm curious about is, are we thinking only in the scope of those things that will only go 5 or 15 miles an hour? Or are we even thinking that there's such an animal that can go 50 miles an hour and be an electric powered vehicle and be classified as a scooter? And I'm just curious as what the thought process here is.
Right now, we're relying on the self-propelled vehicle definition, which does not set a limit.
Okay.
So we were just discussing how the scooters that are like $5,000 or less, or the most common ones you're seeing, are going 20 miles an hour. But we don't have a minimum standard. That might be, again, in that option to regulate. Maybe, if you're concerned about the Tesla going 100 miles an hour on city streets, you may want to just say scooters are allowed per the statute and they cannot be allowed to go any faster than X. So.
Do we have a speed limit on bicycles that are self-propelled?
We do not. We do not. But because they're allowed on roadways, they have to follow. My conscience is here.
Yeah.
They have to follow the rules of the roadway. So I think the common law is kind of like, we can allow, once it's been blessed to be on the roadway, you don't want to reverse it and allow it on the sidewalk. So it's treated that way. Oh, another kind of idea that had come up that Chief and I saw in our research is some cities are electing to, as they develop their roads or improve their roads, create certain paths like bike lanes that scooters would also be allowed on the road. So that way you have a specific, they're allowed, but they're only allowed on certain sections of the roadway that some might perceive as a little bit safer. So the last thing I'll hit before I wrap up is that any regulation beyond what we're doing now, and the regulation we do now, falls on the police department, and they'd be primarily responsible for enforcing any permissive ordinance because scooters fall within the roadway. So knowing that, Chief had some concerns about the safety with allowing any more permissive language in our code. And so he'd really want to talk about that. And Public Works was concerned about, they would be assisting in regulation because often you find scooters in parks or in just public areas, great parking lots, or just city spaces. And so they're concerned not only about them being left or handled in closed park areas, but also they'd want council to address designating spaces that are already safe. The city engineer was a little concerned about some of our roads in certain parts of Bel Aire. The slope is not ideal for a scooter. And so she was just saying that if the council would give some guidance on what roads are most appropriate for scooters, if you do anything more than we're doing right now. So those are the two kind of departmental concerns.
So it's just to follow up on something that Joel said. Chief, can you elaborate, please? My understanding has always been that no matter what the vehicle is, you can't speed. I mean, it's against the law to speed, and you could be ticketed. If a bicycle, scooter, whatever it is, if the speed limit is 30 miles an hour and you're going 40, you could be ticketed for that.
Because in the standard traffic ordinance, there is a specific statute that it's based on that says that bicyclists have to follow all the rules of the road, just like a car does. Okay. And in 2019, the legislature took that set of rules and they applied it to scooters.
Okay.
So
it does,
scooters
it applies
have
to
to
any
follow-
vehicle that's on the road.
Pardon?
It applies to any vehicle that is allowed on the road. If a vehicle is permitted on the road,
They have to follow.
they have to
the
follow
law.
the traffic laws of
Yeah.
the road.
But what they did in 2019 is they said, okay, scooters, they're off over here by themselves, and some of these laws don't apply to them, but let's put them over here and make them follow almost all of the bicycle regulations. Okay. Whereas a bicycle has to have some reflectors and so on and so forth. That doesn't apply to the scooters, is my understanding. But the stopping at stop signs, trying to give a signal when you're turning, those type of things would apply. And speeding would be there also. They would have to follow the speed limit.
And if you flip your report over section 135.1, all regulations applicable to bicycles also are applicable to scooters, electric scooters. And that next section goes into, that was section B. Section C goes into the fact that a council may adopt an ordinance or resolution that further restricts or prohibits the operation of scooters. So this council could go further restrictive, but certainly not the other direction.
I have a couple of questions. Potentially a lot of questions. First of all, I'm curious. It looks like the language of motor powered or motor driven is, unless I'm missing it, only applying to electric power.
Correct.
Where do the internal combustion engine scooters or bicycles fall into?
Okay, and I believe what they did is they started with that, but because of the creation of the electric scooters, they added that later. So the motorized scooters were already in the statutes, but they added the electric scooters after that.
An electric motor, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Or you mean something else?
I mean, like a gasoline powered. So, for example, a bicycle that has a small gasoline powered motor on it, where is that addressed in the law at all?
Yes.
A bicycle with a gas-powered motor is not allowed on roadways.
So if a person had a DUI, we would recommend they get a motorized bicycle, but like
Electric
a
bicycle.
bicycle like you're describing with this combustible.
No, they can't do that.
It doesn't. Well, a person with a DUI can drive a non-vehicle bicycle, which I believe falls within the definition of the kind of engine that you're driving on sidewalks and stuff like that.
Okay, so we ban electric powered scooters or bicycles from the sidewalks, but we don't ban gasoline engine powered
Okay.
scooters or bicycles from the sidewalks.
So bicycles and scooters cannot be on sidewalks. And that's segways, golf carts. They just can't be they're not supposed to be on the sidewalks at all.
Okay.
And that's by statute. And the statute itself doesn't give the governing body of any city the latitude to say, we're going to allow them.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd have to do some research for you if you wanted to find out about those kind of rigged engine scooters to find out whether they're falling within the definition, because those definition sections go down like 30, 40 words, or 30, 40 sections of definitions. So we could find out if those engines, but those are far less likely than the broader.
Yes, they
electric
are.
scooters.
I know because in my neighborhood, someone does drive a gasoline powered bicycle. I mean, it must be a 1 or 2 horsepower type engine, but,
And they're not supposed to.
and yeah, they're on the road and the sidewalk. And so I'm just curious.
I can look into that.
Okay.
Motorized bicycles.
And does the language extend to how many wheels? I mean, it does mention single wheeled vehicles, but are there any 4-wheeled vehicles that qualify as a scooter /
Yeah, they would
bicycle
be
or
like
cycle?
Motorized skateboards. They would be the 4 wheels.
Oh, motorized
Same-
skateboard.
Same
Oh, yeah.
configuration with a stock and the handlebars. It's just with 4 wheels. Now the mono wheels, I know the Kansas Association of Chiefs of Police is going to approach the League of Cities or League of Municipalities to maybe update the statutes, because right now it says at least two wheels. But right now we have the mono wheels, the big mono wheels,
Sure.
and the gyroscopic unicycles, I
Right.
think is what they're called. And those are not addressed in the statute at all. But we've asked that the League of Municipalities maybe join with us and create a definition so that we'll have something to go on. Because there's one guy in town that I know of that has one of the gyroscopic unicycles,
Mhm.
and he can get up to 30, 40 miles an hour. I know they're not supposed to go that fast, but his sure does.
If you look at the example I gave you for Manhattan, they
Mhm.
went ahead and swept those in. They addressed motorized skateboards, electric one-wheel boards, et cetera, in their definition of scooters. So they're, in Manhattan, they're treated like the electric scooters. But as Chief is saying, we just don't have that.
Yeah.
If we're relying on the state law, we just don't have that right now.
Okay. Thank you for answering those questions. I guess like my feeling on this whole thing is that, look, we're not allowing golf carts on the road. I don't see why we would allow anything less than a golf cart on the road in terms of a motorized vehicle, whether it be gas or electric, that falls into this small category. I mean, safety is the main reason why we are currently not allowing it. And I mean, the golf carts came with all this baggage potentially if we allowed them, by having, we talked about lights and reflectors and all these kind of safety devices that potentially it could have. And these things have none of that. And they're on the same space. To me, it doesn't make any sense why we would allow any of these motorized vehicles on the road. I mean, we've determined that the road is for cars and bicycles, but I don't know. I guess from a safety standpoint, I think we're being inconsistent. I don't see a strong argument for this, unless someone has one. I'm curious to hear what the argument for it is. But in terms of I hadn't heard of the idea that someone that gets a DUI, they would have to look at potentially an electrical vehicle or whatever. But I mean, I guess the way I'm looking at things, it seems like, well, I guess the bicycle is your option. But I don't know. I see a few of these, a handful of these in my neighborhood and around, and I'm always shocked that I'm not as familiar with what all these statutes are, but the fact that they're not just banned outright, I'm kind of shocked by that. So I'm surprised that all these vehicles are currently allowed on the road. The way I see things right now, I don't think they should be.
But for Councilmember Smith's request that I look into this, I mean, Chief deals with it, but I didn't see it. And I was like you, I presumed that they were not allowed. So definitely.
Yeah,
triggered the
when I asked that we talked about this, it was on the premise that they were not allowed. I think maybe actually the statute's been updated since we had the golf cart topic, where maybe we hinted the scooters as part of that discussion, and it was my understanding that these weren't allowed. I've seen a number of them, not a lot, but some of them driving in Bel Aire, and mostly I've seen them kind of going across main streets into other neighborhoods. They are more of the privately owned version of the scooters, not necessarily the rental ones. And so I, believed they were prohibited. And so it's good to know that they're actually not prohibited. I was in favor of, going ahead and revising the code to allow them on the assumption that they were prohibited, which they weren't, because I think that, it's similar to a bicycle, and, I wouldn't see any issue with people doing that. And so that's the reason that I was interested in looking into this. So it sounds like by statute they're allowed today, and I don't see a reason to prohibit them in Bel Aire. They seem to be allowed in most places, and I think most people presume that they're allowed in cities at this point because of their pervasive use and everywhere else. So that's just kind of my high level thoughts. I did have one question on the sidewalk issue. You talked a little bit about how the city cannot regulate bicycles or scooters on sidewalks, but in the case of Woodlawn, we are putting in a sidewalk on one side of the street, and we're putting in a multi-use path on the other side of the street, with the intent of allowing bicycles to be, able to drive on that multi-use path. do you have any concerns about us designing that multi-use path to be, for bicycles, potentially electric scooters to be used on it? Is there a clear distinction between a sidewalk and a multi-use path legally, such that we are within our rights to do that? Because that was the intent of the design, is for, bicycles especially to be able to use that and not be on the main part of the street if they didn't want to
In
be.
fact, other cities are doing that very thing. So I would like to know what the real rule is.
Oh, okay, this is, because you didn't use the word sidewalk, which is what we presume, like a 10-foot sidewalk, but you're saying a multi-use path, which is that different by definition? My gut says it's not the public roadway. So it's in my initial gut, it's not the roadway, but it's also not the sidewalk. So can the council regulate that in some other way without stepping on the statutory restrictions we have? I'd have to do some research on that. Can we find, and my first thing would be to try to find this definition of this multi-use path that excludes vehicles, but that would be appropriate for this kind of activity. I would just have to research that.
Because it's not going to be designed for cars to drive on it. It won't be wide enough. It's not going to be striped, but I believe it is the intent that bicycles be allowed to drive on it, and bicycles can also drive on the roadway. That's part of the point of it. And, I think that we may get into a situation where, scooters could drive on it, which I think would be fine. Just like bicycles, golf carts are a whole different issue, probably for a different day. That I certainly have supported that in the past and will probably continue to in the future if it comes up, but maybe a different issue for a different day on those.
That path is to be 10 feet wide. So most cars could drive down a 10-foot wide path, although
Well,
you'd hope it never would do that. But
We'll catch them if they do.
you think you will?
We'll try.
So as you research that, just another thought is, what would be an appropriate vehicle and an inappropriate vehicle on that 10-foot path? Because, is a golf cart something we would put on there if we allowed golf carts? Because we certainly can't allow them on sidewalks because they'll take up most of the sidewalk if they do that. But I don't know. I'm just wanting to know what the current law is, and then what do we need to address it if we need to address it? And I don't know.
Well, when we get to the golf carts, we have a subject matter expert, and Cindy LaFleur at the Catholic Care Center, who has a definite opinion on whether they should be allowed anywhere on a street, whether they be a public street or a private street like they are at the Catholic Care Center.
So should she own one?
No, but she has to contend with the people that do.
Oh, okay.
And like I said, she has a definite opinion on that. So let me know and I'll bring her in. Because, 2 weeks ago, I stopped an 84-year-old resident who was driving northbound in the southbound lanes of Woodlawn.
Oh.
He had gone to the Dillon store, and he drove southbound in the northbound lanes to get there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And usually on my way home from work, I see somebody driving up to the church, probably for mass, on the sidewalk from the residences there off Bethany to get to the church. And she had some choice words for whether the whole city of Bel Aire should go that direction, but we'll hold that for another time.
That sounds like you just gave an example of someone doing something illegal. So it doesn't sound like we would even need to change the law to stop that.
Thank you. The multi-use path, I believe that there are some definitions in the zoning code that address that and what can be allowed on those versus just a sidewalk, just a regular sidewalk, for a wide sidewalk. So that might be a starting place.
Certainly. And if it does get interesting and it seems like something the city would want to invest in, or we can always add a definition so long as we don't bump into the sidewalk definition or the roadway definition, because those are already regulated.
My interest right now is just to learn what is the current
Right.
status of the law, because
these-
I don't know
Right.
on
Yeah,
those multi-use paths.
Right.
or
And I honestly.
whatever you
wouldn't-
call them.
Right. Yeah, I'm happy to
Yeah.
do that research. I didn't see it going this way to creating a new path, but that might be an innovative way to.
As we move forward with, different streets and roads and additions that are coming into Bel Aire, we might just keep in mind that we add a bike path, someplace for bikes to be, and that covers a safe area for scooters to be also.
And do you mean on the road or a separate? But yeah.
Yeah. Just like on 37th Street.
And I think our intent with Woodlawn was to have that a little bit separated from the street because I think it's widely perceived to be safer to not have those actual bicycles on the same roadway where cars can swerve over and hit them. Having a curb between you and the bicycle would certainly feel safer to me if I were riding my bicycle, down the bike path. I would prefer it not to be on, the roadway, and more like what we've designed Woodlawn to be, with a curb between the roadway and that bike path.
Well, I do know that parents will, with children like younger than 10 years old, especially maybe even 11 and 12, would not want their children riding their bicycles on the street. And they would expect them to ride them on a sidewalk. And I'm not sure that that's legal or not legal. I just don't know the rule on that. And I don't know, maybe that's something you just don't get too concerned about. But what is the rule there?
I have not written one of those tickets in 7.5 years of being here.
Okay. All right. Very good. Any other discussion on scooters or questions, comments?
Well, I guess I would just like to just kind of reiterate. I think the sidewalks and the multi-use path should be for human walking, running, or human powered, if you will, mobility. So bicycles, rollerblades, skateboards, things that are just purely human powered, because there's a natural limitation in speed, and you're careful when you're on a sidewalk and whether you're driving a bicycle or rollerblading or skateboarding or running or jogging, you're generally very careful and very, you're a part of your moving is based on you doing everything, right? Physically. And it takes work. You get tired after, all of that, it's naturally limiting in sort of the risk taking that is taking place. When you introduce motor powered scooters, skateboards, or any of these motor powered, micro mobility devices, they get faster, and they get, the risk of what happens when there is an accident, or if you run in. The biggest, the hardest challenge about going on the sidewalks, like with my children, is teaching them when they're overtaking somebody. We rollerblade quite a bit on the sidewalk. And when someone is on the path ahead of you, announcing yourself to them, that now half the time people have earbuds in their ears and they can't hear you anyway. But I'm teaching them, announce yourself that you're coming before you get to them. Say, hey, excuse me, I'm coming. Teach them, hey, I'm passing on your left. Try and take those considerations, And again, when you're doing the work to propel yourself, you're kind of naturally within a certain reason, And I think, I've seen people out with electric scooters and stuff, and I know they're fun. The main reason people use them right now is recreational. They're fun. I get it. It's fun. But, there's an element of increased risk, danger to other people, all these things. And people are a little less careful when they're on these electric vehicles. I've experienced it myself, and you get this thrill that you're going fast and blah, blah, blah. And I just think the sidewalks and the multi-use paths we should just limit them to make sure that they're protected for human-powered endeavors, and all the motorized stuff. I just don't like them mixing with cars. There might be fine now where there's a few of them and they're infrequent, but I don't want to end up like in China where you got like 80% of the traffic is scooters. And I think it will be a problem. That was my argument against the golf carts. One of my primary arguments is that over time, as more and more people get them and start using them, it's going to create a congestion / it's one thing. It's very infrequent we see one of these things out on the road, but I think they're becoming more popular. They're becoming way less expensive. And I just think allowing them or opening the gates to have them, you know, on all these places, I just favor keeping them off the street for cars and bicycles, and then the sidewalks for human powered stuff. So.
Mr. Mayor, what are the rules for skateboards, rollerblades? Are they allowed on the sidewalks or those street, or what's the rules on those?
Since they don't have a motor of any type, anybody using them is considered a pedestrian. So they're
So what
allowed.
about a human powered scooter
They're allowed.
on the sidewalk?
Yep.
But just not a pedal bicycle is allowed on the sidewalk.
Right.
Interesting.
I didn't create
Get more
the
speed
law.
out of that bicycle.
You can go 30 miles an hour on a bicycle.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion on the scooter subject? So we're going to learn what the statutes actually tell us on multi-use paths. And
Yes, I appreciate the guidance. I think this is kind of bringing the discussion to a better place. So next time we have a chance to talk about it, we'll have that information for you.
thank you. All right. Very good. Moving on to item B is redistricting, county and state as a result of the 2020 census. We are in that process now. So I think Mr. Lasher has some things he wanted to show us and talk to us about.
Sure, Mayor. I've got some maps to look at, and just a discussion I think that the mayor wanted to have specifically for the state redistricting, but so Sedgwick County is looking at redistricting the commissioner districts.
The mic on?
Yes, just turned it on. And so currently, this is how it is laid out for the whole county. Obviously, we're going to look at Bel Aire, how that affects Bel Aire. So they've got, I think they put out 5 different plans. What's on the left is the current, and then we'll go through plan 1, 2, 3. Really, you can see the outline of Bel Aire is basically here. So this would be Oliver, and this is 127th out here. And then this is the railroad tracks, et cetera, et cetera. So basically, this is Bel Aire, and you can see, so this is like where what this plan changes. That doesn't affect the city limits of Bel Aire. Plan 2, you can see they're kind of moving down here. Again, that does not affect Bel Aire. Plan 3, again, they're making some changes down here. Does not affect the city of Bel Aire. Plan 4, again, we're up here, so it does not affect. And then Plan 5, see, they're taking all this in. Again, doesn't affect Bel Aire. So really, I don't think there's any concerns in the county district. We'll have the same district right now. It's Commissioner Meitzner. So whatever plan that they would choose doesn't affect Bel Aire. So we would within the city limits would have one commissioner. Now this is where it's a little more unique. This is the House of Representatives. This is currently what it is. There's no proposals yet. They're on a listening tour. And I think I sent something out to council, and the mayor and I were talking. I think it's coming up in the next week. Some type of listening tour that's at the technical school, I think.
So the county's having one on Monday, the 15th.
Okay.
But Sedgwick County Association of Cities Saturday has the members from the House of Representatives there.
Okay.
So it'll be an opportunity to have some discussion with them. I plan to be there and talk with them about this very thing.
So they're going to talk about it, and so this is the one effect that the city has. As you can see, this is what's colored here is Bel Aire. I believe this is Woodlawn right here. So for the state house, we've got one representative here, and then the rest of Bel Aire is over here. So we're divided. for representatives. And then on the Senate, we have the same issue. You could see, so this is one senator, and then this is the other. And again, we're divided in half with Senate and House. So I think that's really the meat of the discussion today is, as council's weighing in on this, what's your thoughts and process of one versus two?
I think we would be well served if we could, have Bel Aire represented, but not split down the middle from a representation perspective. And if we could maybe even officially send a letter and ask that be considered as part of this redistricting effort, that would be great.
So what happened 10 years ago when the census came out? The legislature could not make a decision on redistricting, and they punted it to the Kansas Supreme Court. And Kansas Supreme Court is the ones who split Bel Aire in two, and nobody got to say anything about it other than, so that's where it happened. And so I'm proponent that we be brought back together as one community, and that they not do that to any community where it's feasible. I mean, obviously Wichita's got to be more than one district just because of the sheer population. But most communities in Sedgwick County, I don't think there's any other community in Sedgwick County that could not be in one district. If there is, I don't know what it is, because I think it's 73,000 people per district. Was that what the number I was seeing?
Yeah, I don't remember that it was
Yeah,
tied. It was
something.
tied to numbers and
Right,
stuff like
right.
that.
So,
yeah.
I see no reason that shouldn't be a goal. If there's, let's say, have a very, very good argument for not meeting that, I would say they should do that.
The only one comment that I have, and I've just been thinking about it, and I just wanted to throw it out for you to think about, is from one standpoint, it certainly makes sense to have all the citizens of Bel Aire have one representative or one senator. From a political standpoint, is there a benefit for Bel Aire if we're wanting to have something done at the state legislative side to have two senators or representatives supporting us? Because you would think that Bel Aire's a pretty good sized voting block, 8,300 people. Is there a benefit for us to go to two senators now and say, Bel Aire would really support this, and we would like your support for Bel Aire? And so now we have two senators hopefully representing Bel Aire or their constituents. And the same for representatives. There's more representatives, obviously, than there are senators, but we would have two supposedly carrying our issues instead of just one. Now, I don't know. I'm just that's just something I thought about, and maybe doesn't make sense, and maybe it's better to have one, and that's the best one. I don't know.
Well, and I understand that strategy, and I've kind of thought about that a little bit myself too, but the other side of me says that our representatives, one, I think is much more responsive than the other. Okay. That's just a difference in the way they represent. But having that smaller block of Bel Aire gives us less clout with that particular representative than having a united community saying this is what Bel Aire would like to see, and then that puts them in a position to be more an advocate for that issue. And some of that is going to play with just the personality of the individuals you're dealing with. Okay, so I have Ty Masterson as my senator, great guy, but is he going to pay a lot of attention to issues of Bel Aire? He's the president of the Senate. He's got a lot of things on his plate. Okay. Now, Carolyn McGinn, yeah, she listens to a lot of stuff. She's really responsive to people. And I'm not saying Ty isn't, but I'm just saying he's got a lot on his plate. Okay. And I'm not trying to disparage either one of them at all. I just think they're two very different people, and they approach things very differently. So, I get that, but personally, I still think that we would be better off as under one. But I'll let others give us their opinion too, because I love to hear it.
I don't have a very strong opinion on this. I'm guessing we don't shake and move a lot either way, but if you push me in a direction, I'd probably say I'd probably prefer a unified district, but I don't know if I have a super strong opinion really.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting observation on, potentially having two folks that are somewhat interested in what Bel Aire has to say versus one person that maybe is really interested in what Bel Aire has to say. I think just it probably still makes more sense to me to ask for a unified district, having a city our size split down the middle for, the reasons that it is split down the middle just doesn't make sense to me.
I have an opinion.
We would like to hear it.
I know both of those people.
Mhm.
And they're both good people.
Mhm.
Okay. But one of them is very active with the population that we are. Okay. The other one does not really live in this particular area, and the it doesn't mean that they're not interested, but more interested in what's closer to home.
Mhm.
And it's
Yeah.
not Bel
I know.
Aire. Trying not to-
Neither one of them live in Bel Aire. So, yeah.
So it's, it'd be nice if we had two people who were working for that.
Right. Okay.
So would you like us to put together maybe a letter that the council could consider about your view on redistricting that we could send off?
I would be in favor of that.
Yeah, I'd be fine with considering that.
Okay. We'll put something together and bring it to your next council meeting.
I guess I don't have a super strong opinion on this one. In balancing the two kind of options, I think I would lean towards favoring if we would all be in one district for our state representative. I remember when that changed, I thought I was in the district. I didn't realize that the redistricting had taken place. And I called the other representative thinking they were my representative. And they were, after we started talking, they were asking me like, where exactly do you live? And I told him, and he's like, I'm not your representative. I'm like, oh, I didn't know. You used to be.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, so I guess I'd favor if we were unified. I get the two representative argument, but yeah, I don't know. I guess I can't help but say when I look at these district maps and look at the country and everything, I know there's reasons for how these things come about in their geometry, shape-wise, and their population focus and stuff, but a lot of these are just ridiculous. And I am surprised that we don't have a grid system that just is based on like pure squares. I guess maybe that's my type A brain kicking in, but I just can't help but look at these things and just think there's like reasons that we're probably would be shocked to hear why they're shaped the way they are. And I'm sure it's not just population, but I don't really know. I've not spent a whole lot of time researching this topic, but it'll drive you crazy looking at these kinds of things. But yeah, I guess if we can be unified, it seems to make sense, but I don't know.
Thank you.
That might be good to consider at the same time. I think we're still working on a letter in regards to what is able to be put on ballots, what is not.
So we did get the feedback in, and I think it's been analyzed. So it'll come down to whether the mayor, in coordination with the manager, decide to bring that information to a workshop or
Yeah, I was referring to, we discussed writing a letter to our legislators about changing what is permissible to be put on the actual election
Oh, yes.
ballots in the spirit of what we tried to do with actually having the
Slightly.
citizens weigh in on our council issue.
Yes.
Slightly different subject.
Okay,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
So just a small comment back to what Mr. Elsoff was talking about. I think the basic theory behind these districts is the desire to have one person, one vote. And of course, that makes a representative. But then you have what they call gerrymandering going on, and you have other issues. From what I heard, or what I've read, the state Supreme Court was very good at getting the numbers right, and they didn't pay attention to anything else, okay, other than just get the numbers right. And so that's what they did, and that made the numbers right. I don't know how accurate they were about that, but that's what I heard that they did. We, I just don't think that that was the smartest thing to do. Okay, in this case. So, but okay. Any other comments, questions, discussion on redistricting? Now, I guess we'll move on to policy, employee recognition and bonus policy. I had sent a couple comments to Tyler Asher about this.
Mr. Mayor,
Uh,
before we proceed,
Yes,
could we maybe take a 5-minute recess?
certainly. I think that would be fine. We don't need to call a formal recess, do we? We just do it, right?
Not for workshop.
Okay, great. So let's do a recess and then we'll have a discussion. Okay, thank you.
police department. And so that was effective. We didn't make changes to all of the positions, but council made some changes to the whole overall schedule. So we're right in the middle of the pack of what other comparative cities are doing. But what we're seeing now is the labor market is really getting very tight. You're reading about it, we're seeing it. Park City has a signing bonus for certain positions now that they're offering. We've heard other cities are doing that. I sent you in your weekly update that our public works employees got a direct job opening announcement from the city of Newton that went actually through the city to our employees. And I've had words with the city manager of Newton, and that shouldn't take place again. But regardless, it happened. Just read today, USD 259 is giving 1.5% bonuses to all their employees. That was just out today. On average, we estimate that it takes anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000 to train an employee and bring them up to where they're certified. And obviously that varies, but we have PD that requires certifications. We have water sewer certifications that Public Works has to maintain. And there's a cost of getting those. We run at a very low staffing levels. When we talk about how many full-time people we have versus other cities our size, we're a smaller staff than that. So when a person leaves, puts an added burden on our other employees that are here. And obviously when employees get additional duties on them because they're picking up slack, it adds to their stress. And then financial rewards help with retention, job performance, employee morale. So that's why we're looking at this. So one thing we currently have is Employee of the Quarter. And what I'm proposing is right now, the employees get 4 hours of paid leave. And that's nice, and they appreciate that. But we also know that dollars sometimes are a better benefit than just time off, because dollars, time off can't, buy additional gifts at Christmas or things like that. So what I'm proposing is instead of the paid leave, we do something like $100 for Employee of the Quarter. And that can vary based on, what council would budget for this whole program. And so, you're looking at maybe $400 per year. Again, some examples I gave is if, say, we didn't have an employee for the quarter, the first quarter, the second quarter, maybe then we would increase that a little bit for the ones that did get it for that year. Depending on the bonus. And then it also allows me, like in 2025, maybe instead of 100, it's 150 or something, because time value of money has changed and such. So a hiring bonus, this is something that's new for us. And really this is more for our current employees to bring in new employees. So because if we have good employees and our hope is that they have good friends and good family that maybe would be a great fit for Bel Aire. So what I'm suggesting is that we would offer an incentive for our own employees to recommend people to apply for jobs. And so something like this would be an annual budget impact, maybe 500 to 1,000. So for example, employee Smith would recommend their friend Jones to apply. And so if this was a PD position, say Mr. Jones is certified with the state's got 5 years experience, and the chief selected him as an interview along with maybe 3 or 4 other candidates. And then the chief felt that candidate Jones was the best person for the job and offered this person a job, came on, completed the 6-month probation, ends up being a great employee. Then we would give employee Smith, who recommended this person, $500 for bringing in a new good employee. And again, that's not a huge amount every year because fortunately at this point, we don't have a lot of turnover, but sometimes we get positions that are open in Public Works and Police that would sit for a while. And so if we can encourage our employees to get good employees. And then this is something that's new, performance bonuses. And this is what council was talking about when we were looking at our employee pay scale. So because right now we have a pay scale, and if you are satisfactory or above, then you get a step increase, which step increase is about 2.5%. And so in thinking about that, what potentially happens is that the person that's standard and the person that's exceptional get the same raise. And so there's a reason why a person would get standard and a person would get exceptional. And so we should reward them for that. So again, they get the same 2.5%. So what I'm proposing is that we would look at, and again, this is based on what council would budget for this program. For 2022, in the budget was $30,000, and these recommendations that I'm making would cover that $30,000. All of these would be included in that. So I'm estimating about $25,000 based on our employees and where they're coming in with their ratings. But so, for example, employee Smith received a standard rating. They would get she would get a step increase, which is 2.5%, and that would be it. And of course, the department director would have to outline some goals and some things that employee Smith would need to do to move up on the scale. And of course, that's what we want. We want productive employees. We want them to meet our goals and strive to do better each year. So employee Jones would receive above standard, and that would they would be eligible for maybe a $500 bonus. And again, the key is that the department head would have to say, okay, these are the reasons that you were above standard. And if you want to get an exceptional rating, these are the things you need to do to increase that to exceptional. And then employee Lasher receives an exceptional rating. So the goals would be established. These are the reasons why you've got an exceptional rating. And then if you want to keep that, these are our expectations for you to continue as an exceptional employee. And that employee would be eligible for a $1,000 bonus. And then this is something that we currently have, but it's kind of been a minimal amount. This is a service bonus. So one thing that we talk about, the value of employees staying with the city. They get that experience, they get that knowledge, and that eliminates the need for us to try to find people and train them and all those costs. So currently what we do is employees after 5 years, they're recognized with a bonus of $50. And then it's up to 25 years is $300. So the thought is, if we've got good employees that have been here 5 years or 10 years, maybe we need to be a little bit more substantial in recognizing them for that time. So my proposal would be for 2022, someone with 5 years would receive $500. And then for 30 years would receive $1,750. And again, keep in mind, these are in 5-year increments. So this employee that just got 5 years and would get $500 isn't going to be eligible for another 5 years before they'd get a bonus. So, and then we looked at, based on where our employees are, if they stay, kind of what our budget amount would be each year for that. So those are the key pieces. Some of those are new, some of those are changed or updated. And those, all three of those in your packet, you saw that my estimate is about $30,000 it would cost us to do all of those. So we're rewarding for longevity, we're rewarding for hiring, and we're rewarding for performance. So this is something that I would like is included in this, but we could do this year is year-end bonuses. This is something that we've talked about. Council has done these, and they vary. It's could be a day off around the holidays, gift cards, cash bonuses at the end of the year. Council has done all of these, and they've been in varying levels. So I thought about how can we do that based on, again, performance of the city? How can we reward our employees for the performance that the city did? And obviously they would have impact into that. So what I'm proposing is that if our expenditures came in less than what was budgeted and the next year's budget carryover is met, so in other words, Ted budgets every year what he's proposing the carryover to be. And if our savings were less than that or more than that, so that saving, that carryover would be above what is budgeted, then I could award up to a 2%. And I would obviously work with the finance director on that. So for example, if you were to approve this year, the 2021 budget was $6 million. So Ted just finished his November projections and he's showing a savings of over $250,000 going into next year. And that's over what was his budgeted carryover. So again, the reason we saw cost savings is because PD was down on employees. We had an open position in Public Works. There's other reasons that our savings are there. So if I were to award a 2% bonus, obviously it's justified. The cost would be $38,500, and that's based on the employees' salaries. So the city, after you subtract that $38.50, would still see a savings of $211,000. So this is for 2021. You're taking a piece of that pie of savings and rewarding the employees for that, for what they did. So in 2022, let's say that there was only $100,000 in savings. So because of inflation and we're full staffed and things like that, there's only $100,000 in savings above what's budgeted for carryover. So at that point, I might say that, well, let's do a 1% because we realize savings. We're still going to meet our goals for starting 2023 at that point. So that cost would be $21,000. And so that would leave a net savings to the city of about $79,000. So the question is, citizens are going to ask is, well, how does the year-end bonus help the city? Well, it makes the employees feel appreciated during the holidays. Staff is rewarded for covering open positions. Like I said, if we have open positions, they're covering these positions. A savings is realized by the departments, so the entire city gets to share that with the workers, and encourages retention, rewards fiscal conservatism. So that's what basically the whole basis of the policy is. Those are all the things that are included in there. And again, those are my suggestions. And so it's obviously up to the council to decide if you like the policy or if you would like to see changes or whatever.
So just a thought on the year-end bonus, and I think that's a good start to discuss. The one thing that concerns me is the saving money that actually hurts the quality of the service we provide, and I'd want to see if we could balance that somehow. And I don't have an idea how to do it, but I just want to see if we could find a way to balance that, to make sure that we're still providing good quality service while we're saving money. Because I don't want to save money because we decided to just turn the asphalt road into gravel because it saved a lot of money, but now we got our gravel road and citizens are very disappointed in having a gravel road when they had an asphalt road.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yep.
That kind of a thing. So, and I'm not saying that anybody would go that drastic and just throwing out a crazy example just to emphasize the point. But I always appreciate awarding people for saving money. I think that's a great thing to do. I just want to make sure that we don't do it at the expense of quality of what we provide.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I appreciate those comments. I actually think that me and I don't know, maybe other council members might have thoughts or comments on, I counted 5 different sections kind of the bonus presentation.
Mhm.
I think it might be really helpful if we could just walk through
Mhm.
each of those individually from start to finish and talk
Mhm.
about questions and
Fine.
comments in each
Yeah.
section. Would that be okay?
Go ahead.
So I'll kick us off. Well, I think the first one you talked about was kind of with the hiring bonuses.
Okay.
Was that the first
Bonuses.
slide?
Employee of the quarter.
Employee of the quarter. Okay, I got these out of order.
Okay.
So I guess one of the questions that I had on employee of the quarter is how many folks are typically nominated for this employee of the quarter? How effective are you seeing that program? And I think that I like the program. I do have maybe a mild concern that it could kind of turn into a popularity contest of sorts, which maybe isn't ideal and could create some things that are not good. And I'm just looking for some perspective on where we stand with that today.
Okay, so we have roughly 40 full-time employees. So if we were to say, we're just going to award, we want to make sure everybody gets employee of the quarter. So you're at this quarter, you're at this quarter, so we would do 4 years. So it'd take us 10 years to get through everybody. So we can't do that. There are months when we don't have anybody nominated. And then there's months like this last month, we had 3 nominations. So we had to pick from 3. And so the idea hopefully they would, reapply to receive that. So maybe next time we'll have 2. And then we've had them from citizens as well. So what we do is if there's more than one, or even if there's one, we've got a committee of myself and Tristan and I don't remember who our other person was, but we got a three-person committee that will look at them and say, okay, does this rise to employee of the quarter? We don't want just someone saying, I'm a great employee and, I dressed very well this last quarter. And so I deserve something for that. So we look at it that way. And the other issue is, will we recognize employees more and better if there's something like this where it's a cash thing? Then maybe we'll get more recommendations for that. I'll tell you that and I announced at our last meeting, the police officer that just got it, he was thrilled. And he said, I don't think I've ever won anything. And he was thrilled that he got that. And so that's exactly what our goal is for people to say, wow, thanks for appreciating me. I don't know that I've ever won anything. And, I appreciate that. So that's kind of why the whole reason that we get it started. We like it for citizens to do it. But, a lot of times it's just a department head or, and in that case, it was the chief saying this person has gone above and beyond this last quarter or longer than that and deserves some kind of recognition.
No, it seems like it's being an effective program. And I think the idea of, potentially making it a monetary incentive is a good one. I might even propose a suggestion that you may give that employee the option of the $100 or the time off, because you may find individuals value those things differently. And some employees would rather have some time off and some employees would rather have the cash, just depending on their personal circumstances and what they would value most. And if we think that those things are roughly equivalent to the city, then we should maybe just give them those choices.
Yeah, great idea.
Yep. I think it's fine. I don't have any concerns or anything.
So then the hiring bonus was the next one.
So I did have a question on the hiring bonus. Are you thinking about this as something that would apply to all open positions for the city, or only certain open positions for the city, or how are you thinking this might apply?
So mine is all, because it doesn't matter whether it's a public works person or a police officer or someone at City Hall at the rec. We want a good employee. And even if they're just answering the phones and greeting people, we want a good personality employee to do that. And, what we find out, and those of you that hired have probably seen that too. People come in for interviews and, they look great. They look great on paper. They did a great interview. And then when they get hired, it's what happened to that person we interviewed. Or it could be the opposite. They come in and it's a terrible interview, but that look great on paper, so you give them a chance, and they end up being a great employee. And so the goal is that, our staff members, current staff members, are bought into our our goals and the way we treat our citizens and each other. They know what we're about, and if they feel like they know of somebody that would easily fit in, that's who we want.
These tend to be very effective from my experience because an employee, a current employee, is not likely to hire somebody that's not going to be a great employee. Okay, because that's their reputation. And so they're just not going to do that unless they don't care about their reputation. But most of us have some concern about our reputation. So
Yeah, I think these are very effective too. And, employees, when they do make a referral, they are putting their reputation out there and extending that, for the applicant. And because of that, I do think you have to be mindful of what that hiring bonus amount is, and that you set it, high enough that there is some reward for that employee taking the risk of kind of putting their reputation out there a little bit. It can't be a $25, a $50 type of hiring bonus. It needs to be that $500 level, plus referral bonus, in my opinion. So I think the only thing that was standing out up there was the $500,000 or $500 to a $1,000 annual budget impact. That would maybe tell me that we think that this will be used once or twice a year. And I just wanted to get your gut check on. Is that kind of what you were thinking there?
Yep, that's what I'm thinking. Because we're at a full staff right now, and that could change tomorrow, or it could change in 10 months, or maybe not at all. So, my thought is that, again, it's timing wise. So we get towards the end of the year, we've got a person, we're looking for a person, and someone gives us a good person. Maybe it's $1,000, or maybe we offer $1,000 to do that. If it's at the beginning of the year and we think we may have some other openings, maybe it's a 500. But again, it's not going to happen three times a year.
And you'll set that amount at the time the position's posted, and you advertise that to staff.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I think this is a good policy. I think you got to have it high enough, like I said. And of course, if you get it too high, you get some perverse motivations. But I don't think it's too high. I don't think that's the case here. So I think sounds good to me.
The hiring manager for the role, I assume, won't be eligible for the bonus.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
I have a question about this. And I think this is a good idea. I think 500 sounds about right. Have we ever priced bonuses like this such that the taxes are covered? So it's whatever the whole tax would be, so that the net payment to the employee would be an even 500.
And that's a great observation, because, we hear about that. Council has given bonuses at the end of the year. And that's one question is, okay, it's $100 bonus and the government's going to take $30 of it. So really it's a $70 bonus. So that's a good consideration that I think, if this is something that you agree with, and if you agree with that idea of a net bonus of that, I think that also is a benefit when we tell employees, hey, if you bring us a good employee, we'll pay you $500, and that's net. And again, so that costs the city $600 or something like that. Again, we're still within that $1,000. That I think that's a positive thing.
that's a tough one to chase because everybody's in a different tax bracket.
Yep.
And you don't know what it is. So you just have to base it on their withholdings that they're currently taking and go from there, because otherwise you'll never find the end to that one.
Yep. Okay, we ready for the next? So performance bonuses.
Justin's always stuck going first, so I'll go first this time. I, in principle, like the idea of bonus being tied to performance and motivation. So when I initially, as you were explaining, I thought this was a good idea. My concern would be this. Sometimes what this ends up happening is everybody just gets the max every time. And that's what happens. And this is nothing more than a de facto raise, not much of a motivator, because everybody knows the policy and nobody wants to be the jerk boss that only gives you the standard. And so I don't know how we guard against that, and maybe we can't. I don't know, but that was the thought I had. I would be worried that rather than it being a motivator, it's just everyone's just going to get a raise.
So just a reflection on that thought. I would say if we'd started seeing that, we have a concern with our city manager who's allowing that to go on, because that's not, and I don't think he would do that, but that's not what a city manager should do. City manager should be making sure that these things they are defensible and appropriate. And if everybody is exceptional, that's extremely unusual that you would have a staff of 44 people or 50 people that every one of them is exceptional. I think they're all great guys and ladies and guys, but that's just not the way the world is.
Yeah.
So my thought is, because I've thought about that, because it's not just that way. You could have Santa Claus and Scrooges. So, Santa Claus wants everybody to be exceptional. And Scrooge says nobody is above standard. You're all standard. So my thought is that we have a buddy system. So, and we're small enough that we can do that. So in other words, let's say Jackie works with PD a lot. And so the chief would do his, and he would say, okay, this person exceptional, this person, or he'd say all these people are exceptional. And then Jackie would say, really? I've worked with these people. I think this one's certainly exceptional. I think this one's a standard. And then the other piece of it is then we would need to do some training for our department heads before we would implement this to say, okay, not everyone's exceptional, or if they are, these are the standards we're going to set as a city for an exceptional employee. And if you can argue to me that everyone in your department is exceptional and these are the reasons why, because they meet them, then it's okay. And then the buddy that's looking out to him would say, I agree. And so, again, that's not a perfect system, but I think training so that we all get on the same page of how we're going to rate, and then that we have a buddy system, a check system that someone else says, I agree and I disagree.
I think that'd probably be fine. I thought about, you can only give so many of these out, or you have to have a certain perfect bell curve or something like that. And that sort of ruins the whole thing too. So that I think you're a way of trying to at least have some sort of make sure that you just don't walk in and everyone hits standard every year. And that's just what they do. That may be a way to help with that. I'd be open to other ideas on that, but that does sound one way to kind of help mitigate that problem.
So, a couple of thoughts here and maybe a question too. I would be disappointed if we were using this program to kind of offset the salary of what we should be paying somebody for what they're contributing. And so I guess the example that you called out where you've got employee one and they're contributing at a standard level, and employee two who's contributing at an exceptional level. And yep, they're both going to get a 2.5% merit increase. Well, if we think the employee that's contributing at an exceptional level is going to continue to, perform at an exceptional level, and we don't think that their salary is compensating them appropriately for, kind of what they're delivering here, we could bonus them every year and say, yep, you continue to be exceptional. Or we could try to actually address the root cause of, hey, we don't think we have their salary set appropriately for what we're delivering, reset their salary at the right level, and then say, hey, you've got a new kind of bar for what standard looks like. Because I assume that as, people progress and they're here longer, their pay step increases over time, their expectations probably increase with that. Is that kind of how that works? Or
yeah, and I think that's a good point that would be up to department heads, is if you have an exceptional receptionist and they're doing a great job, and they could take on some more responsibility. Then is that, are they still a receptionist, or have they moved up now to an administrative assistant where they've got more responsibility, a little higher salary? And our goal is that, again, they're standard or above in this new position, but we adjust their salary based on the fact that they're exceptional and they can take on more. I think that's a good point that the department heads would have to look at too.
And the flip side of that is we also, as a city, can't get into a position where we have, somebody in a role and they are exceptional, but there are certain things that, the city's only going to value at a certain level. Certain tasks are, the market will only pay so much for a certain role doing a certain type of activity. And so, there's a right balance to find there where you can't get yourself to where you're at the top of the step and then you're also doing really significant, performance bonuses. And then the citizens are really paying more than they should be for the services that are actually getting delivered. And so I know that you and the department heads have to think about how to carefully balance all of those things. I just wanted to call out that those were a couple of things that were sticking out to me. This is probably my favorite bonus category of, trying to really drive incentives towards where people are contributing more. The across the board nature of it, based purely on the performance rating on the review. There are complications with that, as have already been talked about, but having a way to, indicate where somebody's really gone above and beyond and they've done extra work because a staff member's been out or you've been understaffed in a particular area due to open positions, I think is really important. We need to make sure that people have the opportunity to get compensated for that work that they're doing.
And I think the other piece that is important to know for Bel Aire is that, so it's been 7, probably 8 years since we've given a cost of living. And cities are doing that. I mean, they're doing step increases plus 2% cost of living. So their employees, if they're standard or above, they're getting a 2.5% pay increase, and then they're getting a 2% cost of living increase. So they're getting a 5.5%. And so I think this was kind of the way to address that is that, okay, we're not just going to give everybody a cost of living raise, but if they're doing a good job, then we should reward them for that. And so that's where it's kind of tied to performance.
At a macro level, if you think about last year and the 40 employees in the city, what type of distribution do we have in terms of performance rating? Is it, I would expect that there's probably not a lot that are below, kind of below standard, or that would have been addressed over time.
Right.
And so you're mostly going to be, below, at standard or above. Is it the majority of staff, at 50% at that standard level of performance, or what does that kind of look like at a macro level?
So, again, when we looked at this estimated cost, $25,000, Tristan pulled all of the evaluations for this last year to see, okay, if we were going to implement this, what's it going to cost us? And so that's where she came up with that $25,000. And what that showed was the overwhelming majority were above standard. Very few were exceptional. Very few were standard. So based on the way we've been doing in the past, everybody was, or the majority, overwhelming majority were at above standard. And that's what we want, and that's what we hope. And the goal is that that's being divided equally among all the department heads. In other words, we don't have one department head just doing standard for everybody and this one doing above standard. But
So on your comment about cost of living, we just did an adjustment of salaries.
Yes.
And so probably if we would even want to consider cost of living, this would not be the right timing because we've already looked at that market base. But maybe that could be revisited in our next budget cycle or something. If we wanted to look at that for 2023, that might be appropriate. I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just saying timing wise, it might be more appropriate than to talk about it now. I had sent you some concerns about the standard receives no step increase and put on probation issue because it felt like that might be in conflict with our and I don't know if the right term is progressive discipline, but if we have a progressive discipline policy that might be conflict or considered substitution to, and you don't want to do anything that's not consistent, right?
Right,
Between
right.
the two.
Yeah, and
So-
and I asked Jackie to look into that, and you want to share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so Mayor, I think that might have been, so there was a summary included in that section that kind of gave an overview of an employee who does great will receive this, employees who are not satisfactory are placed on probation and subject to progressive or subject to termination. That was an attempt to summarize what happens in that process, not to create a new expectation that this policy impacted that. But as the mayor said, if it seems like a little too much, like if you want to get to the heart of the matter, which is that employees who are exceptional may be eligible for bonuses, we can leave that part out.
I would be more in favor of leaving it out because you already have the policy in place. And as you know, when you have conflicting policies and you being the author of the policy, the ambiguity goes against us. Okay. So we don't need that. Okay.
Yep. So we can easily make that change. I
Okay.
mean, I see no problem with that.
Very good.
It,
Was there another going?
yeah. So in the policy, when you talk about these, the performance bonuses, are you thinking about those in terms of fixed amounts or as percentages of a bonus pool, or how are you thinking about how, just hypothetically, how a city manager might go through and think about determining these? I'm just curious.
So what I think would be, again, it would be something that would be even. So in other words, let's say a above standard would be 1%, exceptional would be 2%. And that's based on their salary. And I know we get questions about, well, should it be a fixed amount? Should it be a percent of salary? My personal opinion is that the higher the salary, the more responsibility they have. And if they're have a lot of responsibility and performing at an exceptional rate, then the 2% should reflect their salary, not, a person that has a different position that is a lower salary with less responsibilities. And so that's why I would see it based on salary. Did that answer your question?
It did. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other discussion on this subject?
I guess just to clarify, the performance bonus, that's only given at the end of the year. Is that right?
So the performance bonus would actually be given when evaluations are done. And those are throughout the year because, it's based on your hire date. So a year after your hire date would be your performance review. So that's going to happen throughout the year.
So what about the year-end bonus that has
Well-
been done many times?
It's a different slide.
Yeah.
Oh,
So the year
we have a
end
whole nother slide
would
on that
be,
All right, sorry. I'm getting lost in the weeds here. Okay.
yeah. Okay. So the next one was our service bonuses. Is that right?
Yeah, so I guess my
Okay.
comment on this is I do think it's important to recognize and value our long tenured employees. In terms of thinking about a service bonus as a significant monetary compensation, that's probably not my favorite of the bonus programs here. I like recognizing it. I like celebrating our long tenured folks, but my perspective on this is that when we have people that have been contributing to the city for a long time, they're contributing a lot, and we should be reflecting those contributions and what we're paying them every paycheck, not just every 5 years, celebrating that. And so I guess I'd prefer the service bonus policy to stay maybe closer even to what it is, where we're recognizing, we're celebrating, the current $50 amount's probably, there's maybe some slight adjustment that needs to be made there. But I think the goal should be to recognize and celebrate with this, not necessarily use it as much as an incentive or compensation. And that's just kind of my personal philosophy on that.
Yeah, I tend to not favor just like I got older, so I get to make more money now. So I, I do think the $50 is, this is an exaggeration, a kind of a bit of slap in the face. It's like $50 just doesn't probably matter. Um, so I tend to be on the eyes, thinking we need to pay people the appropriate amount, bonuses, whatever that needs to be appropriate. But I don't tend to think like, well, you're in year 10 now. Here's a whatever. I don't think that's the way to go. So celebrations, recognition, all that kind of stuff, I certainly value. And hopefully, if that person's been here for 15 years and they're really valuable, I hope we're paying them like they're really valuable. But I also don't tend to agree with just time related bonuses. I'm not against it. I mean, $50, what did it matter? I mean, I probably didn't matter, but I probably wouldn't have one like this.
I guess for this issue, for me, the suggestion for $500 for 5 years, that seems like a crazy amount. I mean, that I get that the initial dollar amount was 50 for 5 years. I mean, it's not always super valuable to compare experience that I have and evaluate this, but I would like to think that the city operates kind of within reason of what the private sector is doing. And I mean, I had 5 years at a company and my 5-year reward was not equivalent to $50. I'll tell you that. It was a lot less than that. And I don't know. I mean, there's certainly the milestones every 5 years of an employee is definitely worth celebrating. And you know, I know there's other things that come with that, usually certificates and other kinds of some forms of recognition and that kind of thing. I wish I had a cash equivalent for where I'm at, but I'm just saying, what I see typical in companies is not even necessarily giving out any cash at all, but some kind of like, you know, Bel Aire has a lot of swag and stuff like that with, I'm not necessarily suggesting we do that. I think money talks and it's always nice to get cash in hand for this type of stuff. So, but I'm just thinking my own perspective is like, man, going to like $500 for 5 years, that's like a crazy upgrade. And I do agree with the philosophy that I've heard repeated up here for all of these bonuses and things is that ultimately the primary compensation should be in the salary of the employee, and that these things are they're somewhat kind of token things. I mean, I don't mean to diminish the merit required to achieve, you know, the other bonuses that are merit based, but the amount we're talking here for like this, it just seems like it's more along the lines of compensating for salary that maybe isn't in the right place. I don't know, $500 for 5 years and then increasing that by what, you know, $1,000 for 10 years. I mean, looking at the scale ending at $1,750 for 30 years, there needs to be some kind of increase or something along the way. But this is just striking me as just kind of too much. I don't know. I'm not in favor of 500 for 5 years. I don't know. I certainly wouldn't qualify $50 as a smack in the face either, though.
I just think like, well, we really care about you. Here's $50. No, that doesn't show me you care about me. I mean, I got a year-end thing one time, and they're like, "Oh, here's a $50 gift card to Pizza Hut," and it's
not
like,
you care about you. It's
so if you want to show that you,
this is a milestone in your career
You know,
path or whatever.
a different approach could be to have, you know, to ask the department heads to think about how to appropriately celebrate, you know, the tenure of their staff, and to have them come up with a way to recognize appropriately for tenure. And maybe there is still some physical gift or something that comes along with that, but instead of having a cash payout schedule, maybe there's an approach like that that could be applied appropriately.
yeah, because at some point, being celebrated and recognized and feel like you care matter more than a few dollars. And if the dollars are few enough, the few dollars don't actually matter at all. The actual caring and recognition matters. And, you know, when I was younger, I would work as a janitor, and I'd watch the people that were older get paid a lot more than me, and I was a better janitor than they were. I just think getting older is not a reason to get paid more. And if you are older, hopefully that means you're better at it because you have experience, you have more know-how, and a lot of times that how it goes. I understand, but I do feel like just saying, well, the clock turned one. You should get more money now. I don't think so. I think the clock. Hopefully, when the clock turned over, you learn more and you have more experience, and now you deserve to get paid more. That's how it should go. So I would actually be okay with getting rid of the whole financial aspect of this and hopefully have the department heads have pins. I know people that got their 40-year pin from some company. They valued that a whole heck of more than the $50 they would have got or whatever. I mean, that really meant something to them. And hopefully we're paying enough that, not having money tied to this still shows we care about them and we value them. That's how I would see it anyway.
So I haven't worked any place 10 years in my career, but I've worked a lot of places 5 years. And the only gift or only bonus I remember ever getting of any of those places that I worked 5 years was a clock. And I still have the clock. And that was the only bonus I remember ever getting. That clock probably could be bought for $25, $30 today, and that's the only thing I remember getting. I did receive another clock when I left a company, but that was after, well, it was probably 5 years also, but it wasn't a 5-year reward. It was a reward, just thank you for your service type of thing, because I'd been there for a little while. So.
Okay.
But anyway, that's I don't know the right answer here, but typically I don't think people remember those rewards on the financial rewards for service type of thing. I don't anyway. If they gave them to me, I don't remember it.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll make some changes to this based on the input that I've heard.
Was there anybody else that did you have any input that you wanted to make?
Well, the latter years of my career, I was working totally with salespeople, and they're a little bit different to begin with. Okay. So, giving them a couple of days off or, an extra $50 in their paycheck, they didn't give a hoot kind of thing. But what they did appreciate were something kind of travel related, maybe. Even whether it was, could be even something work-wise, going to a conference that they wanted to go to and having it all paid for, out of the company's gig. Or even, a little bit more fun than that. Those aren't necessarily fun. But there's nothing that you're not going to have a picture of that later on, unless you take it yourself. But they really appreciated that time off, because when you are in a sales environment, you're working all the time. That might be a sleep, at least, but I work for some people who wanted you working 24 hours a day if they could possibly get it out of it.
Yeah.
So we've all been in those environments.
Oh, yeah.
So that was kind of the direction that I had to move.
Okay.
All right. So, and then I think the last one was the year-end bonuses.
So my first thought on this one is we've talked about a lot of different bonuses. We're going to implement a hiring bonus. We're going to implement the performance bonus, which I think is like the very best way to compensate people for their contributions. I think what we've tried to do in years past with the year-end bonus is really recognize when the city's had a great year and kind of make up for the fact that we didn't have a performance bonus program. So I'm wondering if we're actually closing a gap with this program at all, And I guess I'm just kind of trying to think through how necessary this program maybe even is right now. There'd be a lot of complexities with trying to figure out all the right ways to implement and measure and set up incentives here. In a lot of ways, it could go good and bad. And I guess I'm just trying to think through. I'm interested in what the other council members think on how necessary this is in light of kind of the other programs that we've talked about, and your thoughts as well, Ty.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I'm surprised we have this many bonuses. To be honest, I guess when they're put in front of us like this, it's like, oh, you got this bonus and this bonus and this bonus. And again, I can't help but just think back to, well, if the salary's in the right place, I mean, obviously getting money that you didn't have before is always nice. But, I mean, I think there's plenty of people working in the private sector at jobs that just, you don't get any bonus. You have your salary and that's what you get. And you might get recognitions and things, but paying through bonuses, I don't know. I just even just as a citizen of the city, just the idea that, when the city has all these bonuses, it just seems kind of weird to me. It just seems like, I don't know. It just strikes me as a lot of bonuses, and I don't know. It just, Councilman Smith made a good point. I don't know. I guess I'm thinking of the performance evaluation thing, how that's kind of after a year, but it's kind of staggered depending on when you're hired and that kind of thing. I don't know. I guess I'd lean towards, I mean, if the merit-based performance bonus is in place, I do tend to agree that maybe this has less of a place. Because on top of this, we're going to have some kind of year-end policy around Christmas or whatever, right? We usually have something.
That's what this
often
is.
Consider that.
Is that,
Yeah, this
I
would
forget
take-
if that's
it's always-
detached from this or
It's
not.
always
It's part of it.
I think your idea here is that this would be part of that
Yes, sir.
decision.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
how many of these bonuses types that we talked about tonight are actually implemented in any fashion today?
So let's see. Let's go back through them. So the employee of the quarter, it's in place
You have
today,
it in place.
but it's time off.
Right.
And we talked about that. Hiring bonus, we don't have that. And
Okay.
again, that's only going to be if someone recommends somebody. So I don't think you can. I know Jeff's saying we've talked a lot of bonus. There's a lot of bonuses here, but that may affect one person 1 year, and that's it. So, and then again, employee of the quarter, if we want to talk about that as a bonus, that's 4 people per year, on a quarter basis. Performance bonus would affect everybody. And again, the estimated cost based on this would be around $25,000 to the city.
But we don't have that today?
Don't have that today.
Okay.
Service bonus, we have that. Of course, we talked about that. It's much smaller.
Mhm.
And then the year-end bonus, we don't have anything. Basically, the difficulty with this is that, every year the city council talks about it, and it changes from year to year because council members change from year to year and mayors change from year to year, and so we have something every year. We do something. It just varies.
Right.
And so the idea was to maybe take that off the council's plate to have to talk through that every year and do something maybe that would be set in stone that I would handle, and whether it's some time off or whether it's a small bonus because of the Christmas bonus, something like that was the thought behind this one.
Yeah, and I think in the time I've been on council, we've probably twice done kind of a percentage-based bonus for staff, and maybe twice done the time off bonus for staff. I think last year was a time off bonus for staff, and I've supported those things personally, mostly because we don't have that performance-based thing in place, and we hadn't gotten around to actually implementing a performance-based bonus program, which I'm excited that we're talking about here tonight.
So as a morale issue, because we have that tradition, I would hate for us to stop that tradition this year. Okay. If and this is just my suggestion, if we want to discontinue that year-end bonus, then you do it this year and then announce that next year, this is the new bonus program going forward. So that there is not at the end of the year an expectation and then it's taken away, because that's a real kick in the teeth, and we don't want to do that. It kills morale and it's not fair. Okay. But and I'm not saying that's what we should do, but I would not be in favor of not doing this bonus this year, regardless of where we go. Okay.
Yeah, I recognize we
Whether
do
it be
this.
Whether it be this proposal, I'm not saying, but we need to do it.
It seems like part of the reason we started doing this a long time ago is we were super broke. We never gave any bonuses. We didn't have anything else to do. So I'm assuming at some point it was like giving people a day off was all we could afford because we couldn't afford anything else. And then maybe it was gift cards, which probably wasn't a lot of money or whatever. And so this is kind of tradition that's built over a long time, which is why it goes to our plate. I think I'm really in favor of the concept of deciding what we're going to do every year. We need to move on from that. Like every single year, the council making a different decision just does not seem like a good way to do. I understood why it developed that way, and I'm not saying previous councils did something wrong, but it's probably, I think, standardizing it and just having everyone know what it's going to be, and the employees not sure when I've already started to make my Christmas plans now, and I would like to know which days I have off and which days I don't. And so, I think that should all be standardized, how much money I'm going to make by the end of the year, so on and so forth. So some kind of standardizing I'm for. I tend to not be for this financial way of doing it argued here, because I really agree. I thought the same thing. I think Councilman Smith said it, maybe it was the mayor. The problem with motivating people to not spend their budget can have negative consequences. Like if you need something to provide the best service, if I budget it to you, I expect you to spend it if you need it. And for you to be like, well, I'm not going to buy it because I'm going to get like a small percentage of it back to myself. I don't think that's a positive motivator. So I think we should consider a standardization, hopefully something that we kind of offload to decide every year. I think that's good. I totally agree with the mayor that if we wouldn't do it, we can't not do it this year because we've always done it and it's too close to that time. But I wouldn't personally do it exactly this way, because I think if we budget money, I think the expectations that we're going to spend it.
I think in just being a little bit of a devil's advocate, I'm not disagreeing with you, okay? But I do not want us to instill the idea that we got to spend the budget. Okay, because we do see that in some budgeting, especially in government, and that is really the wrong attitude. Just because you have the budget does not mean you have to go spend the budget. Okay, and I tell you, this is the craziest thing I ever saw. I did some direct government contracting years ago, and at the end of the fiscal year, which is September 30th. October 1st is the beginning of the new fiscal year. All the small award contracts were coming out in August and September, so they'd spend the budget. And that's exactly what they were doing. And you could see it every year. You just knew that that's what they were going to do. And that is really a horrible way to manage budget. Okay?
I completely agree with that. I just, we had a family vacation one time where we all put in a pool of money and then it all got spent, and then whatever didn't get spent got equally attributed to everyone else in the family. And guess what? Nobody wanted to spend money on anything. And so it was like not a fun experience, because it was like, well, if you spend money, then I don't get a little bit of that money. But you know what I'm saying? So it's like, I understand that problem. I just don't think that's this is the particular solution to that problem. That I agree that the full budget thing. But anyway, what we should do, I don't know what the people want. I tend to I value probably more than most people days off. I super value those. I think time with my family is super important to me, but I don't know if that's the value of every individual. Some people, maybe something else is more valuable, but something standardized, I would really like.
I tend to agree that something standardized should be done, and I certainly agree with the mayor that just eliminating this year a month and a half before Christmas. That's not what I want to do. So
Mhm.
just to clarify that. But I guess I'm thinking more long term. If we are incorporating the other bonus, that this could diminish in some way. I'm not saying eliminate, but I guess just thinking about it, I guess in past when we did the some percent of salary as a like a cash bonus. I guess also the issue of whether it's based off of savings and stuff. To me, the year-end bonus is not really about that. It's not. I don't know. I guess it strikes me as kind of a cultural thank you. The holidays are coming up. Everybody likes to have a little bit of extra cash. I understand the day off bit. I mean, a day off bit, I think people have liked that in the past, but I know the challenge with the city is keeping the city open and functioning. And that makes it harder perhaps for everyone in the staff to challenge or to schedule rather who's going to be working what day when other, coordinating the days off. So I do, appreciate that. So I guess, I don't know, cash as a percentage of salary, whatever that, setting that to somewhat standardize is what I'd lean towards, I guess.
Well, I think what I hear you saying, Jeff, is that the struggle is kind of what is the purpose of the year-end bonus? Is the purpose, an incentive? Is it to compensate for contributions? Is it just the taxpayers giving a gift to the employees to say Merry Christmas and thank you? Kind of what is the purpose of the year-end bonus? And I think that's been part of the struggle, and probably why there's been so much variation in what's been done in the past is different councils have had different philosophies on what is the purpose of the year-end bonus. And so I do support, getting us to a consistent spot here. I also don't think we can go retroactively apply, what we're about to do here to what's occurred over the past year. That maybe applies to the performance bonuses as well. If a performance bonus is to incentivize future contributions, you'll have to think about, where's the line? And if we have somebody that's getting a performance evaluation next week, does it apply to them or not? I don't envy you having to figure out those details. But I think it's a similar problem there, and we certainly need to, as a council, reflect on what makes sense to do this year, knowing that the end of the year is approaching on us. So I think moving forward, from my perspective, after this year, eliminating this and having more of the purpose or this purpose specific bonus programs makes the most sense to me, so that it's really clear to us and to the employees and to the taxpayers what is the purpose of the bonus program and what are we trying to do with it.
So if we want to do that, and I would support that for going forward, I would suggest that announcement be made maybe when we do this bonus this year, and then the service performance thing is evaluations starting January 1, 2022.
Yep.
And that way you're not stuck and nobody else is stuck as to when do I start implementing this service bonus thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
That's just my suggestion. But I think to try to bring closure to this, we have a little bit of kind of like, I feel like it's a little bit up in the air. What are these proposals are we going to say go forward with, and what ones are we saying no, let's not do this?
My understanding is the performance, it sounds like we are for. The 5-year thing we're leaning against. I mean, obviously we're not making any final decisions here tonight. We were leaning against. The hiring bonus, we were for considering something like that. We're interested in learning, considering that. And then this year-end thing, we're not interested in this version of it going forward of it, but maybe considering eliminating it after this year or considering something else. I value days off so much. I just super value. I know not everyone does, but like, if you want to hire me, if you give me enough days off, I will take a massive pay cut. I love days off. But I don't know if everyone else values that. So that's how I'm seeing. Am I summarizing that right, Tom? I forgot. We were pro another one.
So yeah, I think the employee of the quarter, that was fine. The hiring bonus was good. Performance budget bonus, we were good. I think the service bonus, just the concern or the comment that I heard was, I think we want to do something, definitely not 500, but maybe it's employee received a gift or something at their intervals or some kind of recognition, but not like 500 and 1,000 and that kind of stuff. Is kind of what I heard. We want to recognize them, but we don't want to put a dollar amount to that. But so I can kind of work with that, every 5 years, employees will be recognized based on their years of service with some type of gift or something like that. And then, on the year-end bonus, I think the two issues is what do we want to do this year? Because as the mayor said, my goal was we'd roll this out, all the other pieces next year become effective, because employees need to have, again, we it's a motivation. So we want our employees to say, hey, this year, if you want additional for your performance review, if you want to get an exception, you got to do all these things, and there's a reward there for that. So I think that's why, like the mayor said, we want to do it next year. So really the question is, do we want to incorporate something like this so that I have the ability every year to do something that's a standard, or do we want to do away with that? And then what do we want to do this year to end the past way it's been going and adopt this new program?
So from a personal perspective, I like this if we could find that quality element that we make sure we maintain service quality. Otherwise, I'm not a big fan of this, because my feeling is it pushes people to do things cheaply, and this is not the point to do them cheaply, but to do them most cost effectively. And there's a big difference between being cost effective and being cheap. Okay, so that's my big issue with this, that we don't have that service quality element to it. But I'm willing to hear ideas on it, but I'm trying to bring some closure to this as well, because we've talked about this quite a bit now.
Yep.
So, okay. For this year, do we want to give some direction tonight? Because we're going to end up having this discussion in the next week or two anyway.
I think we've done the year-end stuff in executive session. Didn't we do it in executive session?
Do it in executive session one year.
Maybe that's what I remember.
Because we could talk about those issues because they're personnel matters.
Right. As I was thinking, we had to do. I forget. Maybe Jackie could help us.
I would say if we did it, it was under advisement of the attorney. Personnel would be somewhat more specific in the sense of certain personnel would be impacted in this way and other personnel would be impacted in that way, not general personnel.
And I do think there have been some of those situations that need to be considered as part of thinking about a more global end of year program.
Yeah. So based off that, I will either be able to recommend that you talk about it in under that personnel matter or in an attorney-client privilege conversation.
So let's do this. My suggestion. Let's do this. And I know you got to do this pretty quick, but maybe for our next council meeting, you give us a proposal. And if that proposal requires the executive session, then we'll have the executive session at our next council meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
For this year end. Because I don't want to sit here and tell you what the proposal is. I don't know. And I don't think we have enough information to make that proposal.
Todd, do you feel you have enough, and we'll decide for this year, make a one-off decision like we have. Do you feel you have enough information as far as what the continual pattern is going to be? Because I'm still quite hazy on what the direction we're thinking as far as not this year, but the years following.
Yeah. So yes, I agree. And I think the question we're at is on this. I can get you all the information for this year to close out this year. As far as adding something in the policy, I think the one issue I'm hearing is, do we want to do it based on some type of performance? Is it because how well the city did, the savings that they, some type of financial reason why we would share that with the employees? Or is it more about that I think someone said, it's the holidays. We appreciate our employees. They're being rewarded, but at Christmas time, the holidays, we like to do something and say thank you for this year's service or whatever. Those are the two pieces that I heard, which are very different of how we would apply those. And I could come up with something for either one of those, but I'm not, or I could come up with something for both, and then you could discuss it.
I like the recognition portion better than this, simply because I didn't feel this is vetted through enough. Okay.
So I guess maybe a question for you, Ty, and I guess you can say you don't want to answer this now if you don't want to, but if we were to implement the other bonus programs that we've talked about tonight, the hiring bonus, which I realize will only affect a few folks, the employee of the quarter, which will only affect a few folks, the performance bonus that will affect, all of staff potentially, the service bonus, or the service recognition, which will affect all of staff hopefully eventually, because we hope to have long retention. Do you still see a gap to be filled in terms of recognizing contributions or some sort of year-end gap that needs to be filled? I'm really trying to narrow in on what is the purpose or what is the problem that we would be trying to solve with this specific program before I can kind of think through what is the right way to approach solving that problem.
So I think, you're right. The problem we're trying to solve is through this or through salaries. You remember we had a lot of discussion at workshops on the salary schedule, and council made the deliberate decision to do something major with police salaries, and that was successful. We've got a full staff. Now, some of the other positions needed to be raised. Council was concerned about the cost of doing all of this at once, and so they were just maybe moved a step or two. And so that's where, when I said at the beginning, is our salary is right in the middle of everybody. So we're not the highest paid on any position other than police. And again, they're competitive with Wichita. So you could say that they're tied for the highest with Wichita. But that's, how many officers you have? 14 officers? That's 13 out of 40 employees. So did we address the fact that some of our employees may still be underpaid? I don't know that we did. I think we're still, because, the concern was, if we adopt all this, what's the cost going to be for this year? And obviously the police adjustment was major. So and then the fact that we've got the environment we're in, where people are trying to steal our employees. And that's what happened with the police. That's what got us in that crisis, was other cities were taking all of our officers. So I think what this is doing is kind of spreading that cost out over different measures and not adjusting the salary schedule so that we're the highest paid in everything. And whether we want to be that or not, that's a policy decision that you have to make. But the struggle is, like I said, we've got 259s getting 1.5% bonuses. Again, that's for teachers and such. We've got hiring bonuses. We're not doing that. We're doing kind of the opposite. We're encouraging our own staff to bring in people, but we're not giving people that new come in. And I don't agree with those kind of bonuses personally. I don't like those. I like the one we have. So I think that. And then I see I get questions all the time on our listserv what other cities are doing. Are you giving a 1% cost of living and a 2.5% step increase? Or are you giving a 2% cost of living? So when I see that we're doing a 2% cost of living and a 2.5% step increase, and then all we're doing is a 2.5 step, I'm saying, well, we're falling behind. And even if we are right in the pack of everybody, we're falling behind, because when they do a cost of living, that bumps their whole salary schedule up by 2%. And so again, I think that if you want to do away with this year-end type thing, I'm fine with that. I think we need to come back next year and look at our salaries though, and say, okay, we're not going to reward for this, but we may need to make sure our water, public works guys are, at the top. So we're not going to lose them, that our staff here at City Hall are at the top or up high. So we're not going to lose them. And then a year-end bonus, they don't care about, because they have, like you all said, they're getting well compensated throughout the year. So my thought is that if you don't see the need for this, then let's look at salaries again next year.
Are you suggesting that our scale, our salary scale is on the low side or medium side, or where do you see that salary scale?
So the report that we've got from WSU, there were some that were right in line.
Yeah, I know. I
Yep.
remember
So
that.
there were some there.
Mhm.
Now there were some that were below that needed to be adjusted up.
But I thought we
um,
did that.
Yep. Well, we did on the police. We didn't on everybody else.
I thought we
Um,
did it on anybody that was below, but maybe I don't remember it correctly.
And
I thought we adjusted all of the scales, but we didn't take the scales as far as maybe what the issue recommended.
right.
Okay.
That's
Maybe
right.
that's what it was.
But so then what happened was also within that scale, someone was at a 5, let's say, and we had a 1 to 10. And so we moved that up to a 12 instead of a 15, what they suggested. Then we may have moved that person who should have been over halfway up 2 points. So now they're at a 7. The scale's at 15. They really should be an 8 or a 10. So those are the things that we didn't adjust.
So we maybe need to move people into those different categories within the scale, not
Right.
move the scale.
Right.
Is that what
So
you're
we need to
saying?
look at, we need to look
Okay.
at both of those.
So those are things that have to be done on an individual basis that you and the managers would have to be doing.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Right.
And I think it's important to be, continually mindful of the total compensation story as well, which includes our benefit package, which even though our salaries are maybe in the middle of the pack, I think I understand our benefit package is at the top of the pack, especially from a health insurance perspective. Is that still true?
So yes, we have a very good health insurance policy. Yep. And so I think that's something that we need to look at is, okay, so for example, if this city is the highest at their salary in public works, what's their salary compared with their benefits? Now, you're going to be surprised because all cities have great health insurance benefits. That's just the market of cities. Because here our employees pay 10%. There's a lot of cities that they pay 0. City pays 100%. There's some that pay 80 and everybody looks down on those. So, again, you're going to look at it from your side and it's going to be different. And I think, some of what we give up in salary is for the benefits.
Well, just in general, I guess I'm not in favor of sort of a sneaky raise to the bonus system when we actually need to give a raise. If we need to give a raise, then we need to give a raise. But like if the goal of the year-end bonus is to give a raise that we should actually giving, and that's the point of it, then I see no point in it because we need to be considering raises then if that's what the real issue is. And to me, saying like, well, Ty knows that he's going to lose employees or some department head knows they're going to lose employees and the way they're going to get the pay up is to try to talk the council into a year-end bonus because it's been a traditional thing that we've done throughout the past. Is just kind of an end-around way of doing things that to me we should just make more clear and straightforward on how we do things.
And that's a good point because what we've heard in councils before for bonuses was just that is it's when you raise somebody's salary, that's an every year occurrence. So all of a sudden your budget for salaries have gone up and it will never go back down unless you eliminate position. You give a bonus, that's a one-time cost and you may give it next year, you may not, but it's only one time that you have that expense.
I completely agree with that. But what you were recommending here tonight with year-end bonus was going to end up being a yearly cost, just like giving a raise if it was something that would have been part of policy and not something the council decided on. So it was going to end up it would have been the same. Accomplish the same thing. If that's what needs to be accomplished, that we actually need to raise salaries, let's not do the kind of the finicky thing and let's just get down to brass tacks on what really needs to be done.
We'll give you a clear as mud direction.
Yeah.
I do just want to call out that I think all of this discussion is in the spirit of recognizing the awesome work that we see staff doing here. And I know we've kind of picked apart some of the bonus policies and incentives, and those can be really touchy subjects. And it's tricky to do that in, a governing body where these are public meetings and we're talking about real topics that are going to affect our employees' compensation. And so I do just want to call out and say that all this discussion is in the spirit of trying to, make sure we're effectively compensating folks for the great work that we know that's happening here. And so we do appreciate all of our employees.
Absolutely. And I always really want to make sure, I think some company or organizations try to compensate their employees in these really sneaky ways that save them money and, kind of try to do this thing or this little perk, or we'll throw you a pizza party or whatever. And to me, it's like, no, we value you. We're going to pay you what you deserve. And if we have a pizza party, that's great. That's fun. But we all know pizza's cheap. So let's not pretend that that's providing some sort of making up for a lack of actually paying you what you're worth. So I absolutely do appreciate the people here at the city and what they do. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to compensate what people have earned.
Okay, so any other discussion we need to have? No? Move on to item 4, others issues. Of course, I don't know that we want to talk about any other issues, but Chief has his hand up. You want to revisit something? Okay. Oh. Okay.
Motorized bicycles are not allowed on the sidewalk. If a bicycle is powered by human power only, it's allowed on a sidewalk.
Oh, it
Okay.
is.
That's where
That applies to
you were
adults
seeing a
and children?
disconnect.
Adults and children, that
Yes.
applies to.
Okay.
And
I
I
did not know that.
said they were not allowed. But when Councilman-elect David was asking me a question, I looked something up for him. Here's what it says. A vehicle is described as every device in, upon, or by which any person or property is or may be transported or drawn upon a public highway, excepting electronic personal assistive mobility devices, wheelchairs, electric wheelchairs, or devices moved by human power. So that's an exception to the vehicle statute. So they would be allowed on a sidewalk. Vehicles are not allowed on a sidewalk, but that's one of the exceptions. Does that clarify?
Yes,
that
thank
for
you.
Okay,
That's interesting.
I can
Pedal-
sleep tonight.
If I had a pedal golf cart, I would be okay.
One with a
Is there-
sail.
I'm sorry?
One with a sail.
There
Well,
you
I
go.
guess I just have a question because is there perhaps another statute? Because my
Oh, there's so
recollection
many.
is that bicycles were not allowed.
I've heard that
That's
many
what I
times.
In the city of Wichita, by ordinance, they're not allowed.
Okay.
Okay.
And were you reading from the standard traffic ordinances?
Okay, so
Yeah.
I think just so we get clarification.
This is
I-
not the first time I've been
Right.
caught up with remembering my past,
Right,
applying it to the
Okay.
current.
Just
So
Just so we go the extra mile, for clarification, I would like to ask Jackie Kelly to revisit that and look at that, make sure that we aren't seeing some conflicting statutes here that are
As
giving us wrong direction as regards to bicycles. on
Bicycles,
bicycle-
okay.
on-
we've
on
created
sidewalks.
a list.
You create a list, okay,
So-
great.
Not
This-
of conflicting, but some of these things in, for instance, driving on a sidewalk. No person shall drive any vehicle upon a sidewalk or a sidewalk area except on a permanently duly authorized temporary driveway. Okay. Seems clear enough, but you have to go and look and see what the definition of a vehicle is. And that's what we did. And you have to see what bicycle is defined. For instance, a bicycle is a pedal bicycle or a motorized bicycle without, that doesn't exceed, 5 brake horsepower? Yeah. But anything over that is a motor-driven cycle that has to stay on the street. So it's just a little convoluted, as to what some of those definitions are, and we just want you to have good information to make decisions on. So just to let you know that it's kind of confusing as you dive into it and try to find all the nuance and the exceptions and so on.
Well, it sounds like if it's less than 5 horsepower, a motor powered bicycle could go on the sidewalk.
Yes. Except a motorized bike or an electric assisted bike, those are exceptions to the motor driven cycle.
Just going to say the
Yeah,
fact that the
I
police
think,
chief doesn't know
let's-
the rules is not a good sign of the clarity of our code.
Let's give our attorney, let's give our attorney a chance to research that. Let's not try to figure that out.
Okay, with
tonight.
that, I'd
I
just
don't-
like to ask that we encapsulate internal combustion engines, because I know that is a thing currently
They are.
existing in our neighborhoods. Bicycles with an internal combustion engine, not just electric powered.
Again, okay, I'm happy to look all this up, knowing that the original goal is to figure out what we want to do with scooters, whether we want to create an alternative path for scooters and bicycles maybe, or whether we want to figure out the definitions of each of these to figure out where everything fits on the roadway and then maybe put it on a different path.
I think to some extent, we just want to understand what the current rules are.
If we don't know what the rules are, we can't even decide whether we want to change them. I mean,
Absent the scooter discussion, even, we just want to know what are the rules, and I'm sure the public does too.
Well, speaking for myself, I want to ban them from the street and the sidewalk. Does that clarify?
But until we know what the rules are, we don't know where to go.
Okay.
Okay. So let's find out that, please. All right. At that, unless there's other things we need to discuss, I am going to dismiss this group and we will see you next Tuesday.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.